The whispers that slither through the digital corridors of the wrestling world often coalesce into a single, tantalizing narrative. Ronda Rousey, the outsider, the legitimate fighter who couldn't handle the fabricated world of sports entertainment, was unceremoniously fired after a colossal, ego-driven, backstage fight. It's a story that fits a convenient trope, painting a picture of a volatile champion who was too real for a business built on illusion. It is, however, a complete and utter fiction. The truth is infinitely more complex, more human, and far more compelling than any locker room brawl could ever be. To understand why Ronda Rousey left WWE, not once but twice, one cannot simply look at the final moments. One must trace her entire spectacular, tumultuous, and groundbreaking journey from the absolute pinnacle of one sport to the deepest valley of public failure, and through a complete reinvention that challenged the very foundations of another. This is not a story about being fired. This is a story about the immense weight of creating a myth, the crushing pain of watching it die, and the incredible strength it takes to build a new life from the ashes. All while a hidden, ticking clock inside your own mind threatens to run out of time. To grasp the seismic impact of Ronda Rousey's arrival in WWE, one must first be immersed in the aura she cultivated in the world of mixed martial arts. She wasn't just a participant in the UFC. For a time, she was the UFC. Dana White, the promotion's president, had famously declared that women would never fight in his octagon, a stance he held until he witnessed the ferocious charisma and terrifying skill of Rousey in the smaller Strikeforce promotion. He didn't just open the door for women, he built an entire division on her back. She became the inaugural UFC Women's Bantamweight champion without ever throwing a punch in the organization, her Strikeforce belt simply being converted. Her subsequent title defenses were not mere fights. They were coronations of violence, often lasting less than a minute. Her signature move, the armbar, was a thing of legend, a submission hold she could lock in from seemingly any position, resulting in a series of victories that were as swift as they were brutal. She defeated Liz Carmouche in the first-ever women's UFC fight. She dispatched Miesha Tate, her arch-rival, with cold efficiency. She knocked out Sarah McMahon with a knee to the body in 66 seconds. She annihilated Alexis Davis in 16 seconds. She submitted Kat Zingano in a record-breaking 14 seconds. She knocked out Bethe Correia in 34 seconds in the challenger's home country of Brazil. She wasn't just winning, she was erasing her opponents, building an unprecedented mystique of invincibility. This dominance bled into mainstream culture. She was a movie star, appearing in The Expendables 3 and Furious 7. She was a charismatic guest on late-night talk shows, a cover model for magazines, and an author of a best-selling autobiography. She wasn't just a fighter. She was a global brand, a symbol of female power who had transcended her sport. The myth of Ronda Rousey was complete. She was rowdy, the baddest woman on the planet, and she was, by all accounts, unbeatable. Every great myth requires a great fall, and Ronda's was as catastrophic and public as her rise was meteoric. The setting was Melbourne, Australia, at UFC 193 in November 2015. Her opponent was Holly Holm, a former world champion boxer whose skills were seen as a theoretical threat but not a practical one. The narrative was set for another swift Rousey victory, but from the opening bell, something was wrong. Rousey, driven by an almost frantic aggression, charged forward, but Holm, the superior striker, was never there. She circled, she countered, she peppered the champion with clean, precise punches. The first round was a clinical dismantling of Rousey's aura. For the first time, she looked lost, frustrated, and deeply human. The end came in the second round. A perfectly timed left head kick, a sound that echoed through the stadium and around the world, sent the invincible champion crashing to the canvas, unconscious. The myth was dead. The silence that followed was deafening. In the aftermath, Rousey disappeared. She famously hid her bruised face from paparazzi with a purple pillow as she navigated the airport. The public fallout was brutal, a torrent of memes and mockery from those who delighted in her downfall. Months later, in a tearful interview with Ellen DeGeneres, she confessed to having suicidal thoughts in the immediate aftermath of the loss, a raw and vulnerable admission that revealed the crushing psychological weight of the identity she had built. After a year in exile, she attempted a comeback against the new champion, the fearsome Brazilian striker Amanda Nunes. Fans hoped for a story of redemption. Instead, they witnessed an execution. Nunes overwhelmed Rousey with a relentless barrage of punches, ending the fight in a mere 48 seconds. It was over. Not just the fight, but the era. Ronda Rousey, the MMA pioneer and icon, was gone. Her career in the octagon finished, leaving behind a legacy of both unprecedented dominance and spectacular collapse. She needed a new purpose, a new world to conquer, a place where the performance of fighting was valued as much as the result. That new world revealed itself on January 28, 2018. At the conclusion of the first-ever Women's Royal Rumble match in WWE, a celebratory moment for the company's women's revolution, Joan Jett's Bad Reputation blared through the arena's speakers. The Philadelphia crowd erupted as Ronda Rousey emerged, wearing a jacket that belonged to the late Rowdy Roddy Piper, a tribute blessed by his family. She didn't speak a word. She simply walked to the ring, pointed at the giant WrestleMania sign hanging from the rafters, and shook hands with Stephanie McMahon, WWE's chief brand officer and on-screen villain. The message was clear. The baddest woman on the planet had arrived in the world of sports entertainment. Her initial storyline was pure genius, pitting her real-world credibility against the corporate artifice of WWE, personified by McMahon and her husband, Triple H. The narrative questioned her intentions and her respect for the business. The angle culminated in a mixed tag team match at WrestleMania 34, where Rousey would team with fellow Olympian Kurt Angle against the power couple. Many were skeptical. Could this legitimate fighter adapt to the choreographed, character-driven world of professional wrestling? The answer was a resounding, emphatic yes. On the grandest stage of them all, Rousey looked like a natural. She moved with explosive intensity, sold the story with passionate facial expressions, and performed her moves with a crispness that belied her inexperience. The crowd was electric for her every move. Her systematic dismantling of Stephanie McMahon, culminating in a bone-wrenching armbar for the victory, was a perfectly executed star-making moment. It wasn't just a great debut. It was arguably one of the greatest debut performances in WrestleMania history. Ronda Rousey had not just successfully transitioned, she had taken the wrestling world by storm. Following her triumphant debut, her path was clear. It led directly to the Raw Women's Championship, held at the time by the cunning Alexa Bliss, who was flanked by Rousey's real-life friend, Mickie James. Her first major singles feud was with Nia Jax, a physically imposing superstar whose character was built around being an irresistible force. The storyline cleverly played on the dynamic of a powerhouse wrestler versus a technical submission artist. While their initial championship match at the Money in the Bank event ended without a decisive winner due to Alexa Bliss cashing in her newly won contract to steal the title, it set the stage for Rousey's coronation. That moment came at SummerSlam in August 2018. In a dominant, almost squash-like match, Rousey systematically destroyed Bliss, countering all of her antics and finally making her tap out to the armbar to become the new Raw Women's Champion. Her reign was booked to reflect her UFC past. She was a dominant fighting champion who seemed leagues above her competition. She dispatched all comers, from veterans to rising stars, often in decisive fashion. It was during this period that WWE's creative team sought to add more layers to her character. To prevent her from becoming a one-dimensional, smiling babyface, they booked an angle where, after being provoked, she snapped. She attacked officials and even the on-screen general manager, Kurt Angle. This led to a storyline suspension, a classic wrestling trope used to make a character appear dangerous, rebellious, and uncontrollable. It was pure theater, designed to solidify her baddest woman on the planet persona. It had absolutely no basis in any real backstage conduct. It was simply a chapter in the story WWE was writing for its newest and biggest star, a story that was about to collide with a force of nature even the writers couldn't have predicted. That force was Becky Lynch. While Rousey was establishing her dominance as champion, the Irish-born Lynch, a talented but often overlooked wrestler, was undergoing a radical transformation. A scripted heel turn at SummerSlam 2018 backfired spectacularly when the audience refused to boo her, instead cheering her newfound aggressive attitude. Lynch leaned into this, adopting the moniker The Man and developing a rebellious anti-authority persona that resonated powerfully with the fan base. She became the hottest act in the entire company, a true grassroots phenomenon. A champion versus champion dream match was set for the Survivor Series pay-per-view, Ronda Rousey versus Becky Lynch. The build-up was electric, with both women trading intensely personal insults on social media that blurred the lines between character and reality. The anticipation was at a fever pitch. Then, on the final episode of Raw before the event, came the moment that changed everything. During a chaotic show-ending brawl, Nia Jax legitimately threw a reckless punch that broke Becky Lynch's nose and gave her a severe concussion. The resulting image of Lynch, blood streaming down her face, standing defiant in the crowd, became instantly iconic. She was ruled medically unfit to compete, and the dream match was off. In her place, WWE substituted Charlotte Flair, the company's most decorated female athlete and daughter of the legendary Ric Flair. Rousey and Flair had a brutal, intense match that ended in a disqualification when Charlotte viciously attacked Ronda with a kendo stick and a steel chair, cementing a three-way collision course. The accidental injury to Lynch had been a blessing in disguise, pouring gasoline on an already hot fire and creating the most anticipated feud in modern wrestling history. The road to WrestleMania 35 was paved with this chaotic, deeply personal animosity between the three women. Ronda, now facing a divided crowd, with a large portion siding with the beloved anti-hero Becky Lynch, began to evolve her character. She dropped the smiles and became a bitter, snarling heel who venomously criticized the fans and the business itself. The feud became the central focus of WWE programming. The trio engaged in wild brawls that required dozens of security guards to separate them, were featured in a storyline arrest angle, and continued their venomous war of words online and on television. The energy was so palpable and the story so compelling that WWE made the historic decision. For the first time ever, women would be in the main event of WrestleMania. The match itself was a chaotic, at times messy, but ultimately historic affair. It was the culmination of a year-long journey for all three. In the end, Becky Lynch managed to reverse a move from Rousey into a crucifix pin for the victory, winning both the Raw and SmackDown Women's Championships. The finish was controversial, with replays showing Rousey's shoulders may not have been fully down, but the result stood. Becky Lynch, the man, had conquered the baddest woman on the planet, on the biggest stage of all. After the match, Rousey disappeared from WWE. Immediately, the rumor mill churned. Was she being punished for the controversial finish? Was she angry about losing? Did her heel persona reflect a real-life bad attitude? The truth, once again, was far more mundane and human. Her initial contract with WWE was for a little over a year, structured specifically to culminate at WrestleMania 35. Her departure was not a surprise or a reaction. It was the plan all along. She had been open about her desire to step away from the grueling full-time schedule to start a family with her husband, Travis Brown. She had accomplished everything she set out to do, and now she was choosing a different life. There was no fight, no firing, only the fulfillment of a contract and the beginning of a new personal journey. For nearly 3 years, Ronda Rousey was absent from the wrestling world. She embraced life on her farm and, in September 2021, gave birth to her first child. To many, her wrestling career was a successful, self-contained chapter that was now closed. That changed at the 2022 Royal Rumble. Entering at number 28, a returning Rousey looked dominant, eliminating several competitors to win the match and earn a championship opportunity at WrestleMania 38. The initial crowd reaction was one of genuine shock and excitement. However, as the weeks progressed on the road to WrestleMania, something felt different. Her feud with then SmackDown Women's Champion Charlotte Flair failed to capture the magic of her previous rivalries. Promos between the two often felt stilted and awkward, and the fan connection that defined her first run had noticeably cooled. At WrestleMania, in a match that many fans and critics found underwhelming, Charlotte defeated Rousey to retain her title. While Rousey would go on to defeat Flair in a brutal I Quit match the following month to win the SmackDown Women's Championship, the perception lingered that this second run lacked the spark of the first. The cheers were often lukewarm, and in some cities, audible boos began to surface. She eventually dropped the title and transitioned into the tag team division with her real-life friend and fellow MMA veteran, Shayna Baszler. They captured the Women's Tag Team Championship, but the run was cut short when Baszler shockingly turned on Rousey during a title defense. This set up Rousey's final match, a one-on-one encounter with Baszler at SummerSlam 2023, contested under MMA rules. The match was presented as a gritty, realistic fight rather than a traditional wrestling bout, and it ended with Rousey passing out in a submission hold, losing cleanly to her former friend. After the match, she quietly walked away without any grand farewell. The abrupt and understated nature of her exit once again fueled speculation. But the real reason was a closely guarded secret, a truth far more serious than anyone knew. It was only after she was well and truly gone from the company that the final, crucial piece of the puzzle fell into place. In a series of candid interviews, Ronda Rousey revealed the hidden battle she had been fighting throughout her entire second run. She disclosed a long and troubling history with concussions, dating all the way back to her days in judo, long before the fame of the UFC and WWE. She explained that her neurological health was a significant concern and that the cumulative damage had taken its toll. She described symptoms consistent with post-concussion syndrome, admitting that her ability to deliver promos and perform in the ring was affected by her condition. Suddenly, the entire second run was cast in a new, more sympathetic light. The perceived awkwardness on the microphone, the occasional lack of fire, the sense that something was off. It wasn't a lack of passion or a bad attitude. It was likely the manifestation of a woman struggling with a serious, underlying medical issue in a physically brutal and mentally taxing profession. She also expressed frustration with the chaotic creative process within WWE under its former chairman, Vince McMahon, feeling a lack of direction and control over her character. Her final match against Shayna Baszler was, in her eyes, a way to put over her friend and exit the business on her own terms, a final act of professionalism before prioritizing her long-term health. Her departure was not the result of a single fight or a dramatic fallout. It was the culmination of physical limitations, creative frustrations, and a veteran athlete making the difficult but wise decision to protect her brain and her future with her family. It was the quiet, necessary end to a loud, spectacular career. The rumor of being fired after a backstage fight is not just false, it's an insult to the reality she endured. It replaces a story of immense personal courage and self-preservation with a cheap, baseless fiction. Ronda Rousey's story is not about being kicked out of the club. It's the story of a trailblazer who built an empire, watched it burn, rose from the ashes to conquer another, and finally had the wisdom to walk away from the fire before it consumed her for good.